What is good, Crypto Paradise family? Doing something a little bit different today. I have no guest. We're just going to be hanging out, chatting with myself. And let's see how it goes. Well, hopefully Nick will jump on here soon. But hold on one second. Oh, great. Okay. Things are, I think, working. And okay, let's just talk about the market for a minute here. Yeah, it nuked. It absolutely nuked. Let's just talk about why I think the market crashed, and then where we go from here. That's the title of this. Look, a lot of factors go into a capitulation event like that. I think the Bybit hack plays a role. That scared the market, despite the fact that they did bounce back and restore their reserves relatively quickly, and there was no exchange run. It did spook market participants, so that definitely played a role. I really do think it's a bigger story, though, or the bigger picture, the macro picture, is really what led to this crash and the weakness we've been seeing over the past basically 2 months. Let's rewind to when Trump gets elected. A lot of hype, a lot of excitement around what is he going to do from a regulatory standpoint. What is he going to do with the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve? What is he going to do with putting in a new leadership, the SEC, right? And so that was the hype. That was the sort of, and then you go on and on. But what is he going to do with crypto? Is he going to be pro crypto? Blah blah. And obviously there's a lot of hype leading up to that. And it was kind of it was a buy the rumor sort of scenario, because you saw from November until when he gets actually put into office in the beginning of January, we had that massive run to 100,000. Then reality starts to set in a little bit. The fact that the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve did not materialize quickly. There was no meaningful executive order around it. The executive order that occurred vis-a-vis the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve was essentially that we're going to study it, we're going to put it, we're going to install this crypto czar, and the crypto czar goes to a press conference and says, okay, we're going to study these things. That's a disappointment. What's there to study, right? Bitcoin's a finite asset. It belongs in a strategic reserve alongside gold, in the estimation anyway of everyone in the crypto markets. So that was a bit of a disappointment. But then you start to see the effect of Trump's policies and the fact that they are very disruptive and different, weighs on all of the markets because there's now tremendous amount of uncertainty, right? And say what you will, we're not here to pass political judgment. We're fans of Trump on the show, but I think we need to use some critical thinking at times and say certain things are good and other things cannot be good. Certain things can be bad. No one's going to be batting 1,000. No one's going to make all the right decisions all the time. And I think some of his core policies, particularly around tariffs and immigration, are actually bad for markets. I know some people probably in the crypto space don't want to hear this, but tariffs, what do tariffs do? What are tariffs, right? Tariffs are an import tax. Anytime a business wants to import goods into the U.S., and if there's a tariff in place, imposed against that country that the good originates from, that importer pays a tax, a fee to the federal government. Okay, that's all good and fine. But what ultimately ends up happening is when you impose these tariffs is the producer of that good just increases the cost of the good. So your computer, your mic, your bicycle, your whatever, all this stuff comes from China, Mexico, wherever. Not a lot of stuff gets made in the U.S. anymore. And that's part why that you want to do the tariffs. And we'll get to that. Now all of a sudden it costs more. And what is that? What happens when the price of goods go up? What do we call that? We call that inflation. And why is inflation bad outside of the fact that everything costs more? Well, when inflation is high, the Federal Reserve, to combat that inflation, remember their target rate is always 2%, to combat inflation, they have essentially one meaningful tool in the toolbox, which is to raise interest rates. And you say, okay, well, why does that bad. Why do we care about that? Well, when interest rates are high, and they've been quite high for a number of years now, ever since really COVID and the inflation that was caused as a result of the stimulus that came out of COVID, rates have been high. When rates are high, you can, as an investor, get returns, decent returns, 4 or 5%, on very, quote, low risk investments. Treasuries, right? You can go to the bank, get a certificate of deposit, 4.5%, annual return, 6 month period, 12-month period, whatever. You can get these, quote, low risk investments. And so risky assets, and crypto, for better or worse, is perceived of as a high risk asset, become less attractive, right? And so when interest rates are high, generally speaking, this is all generalities, right? Interest rates are high, then risk assets are being weighed down. And we know that Bitcoin in particular is very sensitive to liquidity. It's very sensitive to the money supply, quantitative easing or quantitative tightening. These things impact Bitcoin in a tremendous way. And so when you have these sorts of policies, particularly on tariffs and also immigration, immigration's another piece of the puzzle, because when you're very restricted on immigration, certain industries, the only way to then get those workers is to pay them more. So where a construction company, for example, could have previously gotten an undocumented worker and paid them $15 an hour, $10 an hour. Now there are less undocumented workers because of the limitation on immigration. And by the way, I'm not here to say any of this is wrong or right or whatever. Legal immigration, it's a polarizing subject. It's not good for some people. It's good for other people. Everyone's going to have an opinion on it. I'm just trying to tell you the facts of what happens when you limit immigration. Certain industries are going to have to, in order to attract workers, pay people more. And what happens when you pay people more money? Well, their wages go up, right? Wages increasing is also bad for inflation, mind you. So, and then by the way, the company, say that's building this house, for example, they have to raise their costs because now they're paying their workers more. Everything is going up then. All the prices of everything going up. So these two policies around tariffs and immigration, say what you will about them, they are not good for risk assets. That's really, to me, the big story here. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it. I know everyone in crypto is pro-Trump. We are pro-Trump to a large degree. I am as well. But these are the facts. This is the result of these kind of policies. And you say, well, Crypto Amaru, well, he's not actually imposing tariffs in a way that is going to hurt the economy, because it was a negotiating tactic against Mexico and Canada to get them to put border guards or whatever at the border to prevent fentanyl from coming in or what have you. And to that I say, if he had left it at that, if he had just completely left it at that, we would be in a better place. But what happened yesterday is he, while I guess being interviewed in France or he was on some interview or said something, he went out and said, no, we're actually going to impose those 20 or 30% tariffs against Canada and Mexico. And guess what happened as soon as that news got reported? The market's absolutely nuked. So these are the facts. You can love them, you can hate them. This is what's going on. Now, okay, then the question becomes, okay, where do we go from here? What do we do from here? I think there is a potential longer-term scenario where Trump's policies actually sort of threads the needle, and we end up actually somehow getting lower inflation and a weaker dollar and lower interest rates. Now, how could this happen? Well, this could happen by one, all the cuts he's making the federal government, Doge, etc. That should theoretically hurt growth, perhaps reduce inflation, and then force the Fed to cut rates. the tariff things cannot materialize. It could be another bluff. It could be, oh, just kidding, I'm not doing this against Canada and Mexico, right? So any number of things could happen where it plays out. You know what? The interest rates are actually going to end up going down. And we're going to find out on the 28th where inflation is from a data standpoint, because the PCE, personal consumption expenditure reading, which is what the Fed looks at, that is coming out on the 28th. And I think there is actually a good chance that inflation is going to come in lower than expectations on that reading. The CPI is always a little bit more, shows more inflation, but the Fed doesn't look at that. They look at PCE. So that's coming out on the 28th. We could be pleasantly surprised. And we could be pleasantly surprised with some of Trump's policies. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the fact that, he's not going to let in immigrants, so on and so forth, maybe that is going to end up being disinflationary. We'll have to see. But right now, the markets are uncertain. They're scared. They don't know what's going on. Tariffs, are they coming? Are they not? Uncertainty is not good for markets. So that is, I think, fundamentally what's happening, why we saw the crash yesterday. And I'm not a chart guy. There's a lot of people out there on crypto Twitter saying, hey, the chart's intact. We're still in bull market, blah, blah, blah. I think that's probably true. I don't think this bull market's over. I think it's another, 20% correction. We have these routine 20, 30% corrections in bull markets all the time. And so, we'll survive this. We will survive this one like we always do. But to me, I think we just need to be honest about what policies are being put in place and their impact on risk assets. So that's all it is. This is just a truth-telling sort of come to Jesus moment. And I think people should have some critical thinking and say, hey, we like certain things Trump is doing, but we don't like others. That's okay to say that. You don't have to just love everything somebody does or hate everything the other side does. You can like some things and not like others. And it's going to be different for everyone. Like if you, as the viewer, are someone who works in a factory or knows people who work in factories and so on and so forth, you probably want tariffs to occur, right? Because this means that companies that have an incentive to move their operations onto American soil, despite the fact that they're going to have to pay people more here, but this brings factory jobs back to the U.S., and that's going to be good for some people, and wonderful, right? Good, I'm happy for those folks. But let's not pretend there are not trade-offs to these policies. And on the flip side of that, the globalization, sort of this flattening of the world from a global trade standpoint, that has benefited some people to the detriment of others for a long time. So let's not lie about that and be dishonest about that either, because for 30 or 40 years, since really the 1970s, when we reduced barriers to trade and jobs essentially got moved overseas. All manufacturing jobs moved to China and Mexico and Southeast Asia in places where labor is cheap. Let's not pretend there were not a lot of costs and a lot of losers in that. Myself, okay, educated, never worked in a factory. It's not good for me if all of a sudden labor costs are higher, because now, the babysitter costs more, the gardener costs more, blah, blah, blah. But there are some people that tariffs are going to help. So, let's just be honest. Let's be intellectually honest about what is going on. The pros, the cons, the goods, the bad. I'm not here to pass judgment. Some of these things are going to be good for you. Some of these things are going to be bad for you. Good for your neighbor, bad for your neighbor. Good for someone in the middle of the country, bad for someone who lives on the coasts. That's okay. We can acknowledge these trade-offs, right? But let's not sit here and pretend that everything is perfect and every policy decision is great for crypto. One thing I'll leave you guys with. One way to basically turn this whole thing around and just, Trump will be back in everyone's good graces. Let's do something with this damn strategic reserve. What are you waiting for, man? You're studying it. You've been studying it for a little bit. How is it that you're moving at lightning speed with basically everything else, right, just cutting, firing everybody, cutting costs, like just going ham on the federal government, moving fast, breaking shit. Yay, disruption. This is what he was elected to do, blah, blah, blah. And yet with this issue, we need to have a committee to study it, and we got to go slow. Why? You went out there in July of last year to the Bitcoin conference and said, this is what you're going to do. Couldn't you have spent those 6 months studying up on this? Didn't Brian Armstrong and all the wealthy crypto people march into your office and lobby you on this topic, and Michael Saylor and all these guys, aren't they talking about this? Didn't they present the enough information and enough sort of bullish stuff around the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve for you to make a decision? I think so. So the one path, short-term path. I think long-term, we're going to be fine. We're going to get out of this crash, and things will slowly creep back up over time, and blah, blah, blah. Crypto's going to be okay. But short-term, if you wanted to just get this V-shaped recovery, boom, boom, then announce something on this goddamn strategic reserve. What are you waiting for, man? Make it happen. Do something. Whether I don't care if it's Trump, I don't care if it's Elon, I don't care if it's some this crypto czar. Make some announcement, a meaningful announcement. We're taking steps. Step one, we've studied this issue. We're still studying whether and how to add Bitcoin. But step one is we are hodling onto, and the foundation of the reserve will be the Bitcoin that had previously been confiscated by the United States. You can do that by executive order tomorrow. He's already done executive orders that are questionably constitutional. And the executive order around the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve may also be questionably constitutional. I don't know. But why is it that you're moving fast and breaking shit except on this one issue? So let's make that happen. Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, some kind of meaningful announcement on it. And we'll get this a wonderful V-shaped recovery. If not, it's going to be a slow grind up, and let's see, inflation numbers, and let's see what happens with the Fed, and let's see what happens with these tariffs, and let's see what happens with everything else. Let's get some certainty back in the markets. But quick, fast, and beautiful approach and solution to this market crash would be action on the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. So let's do it, Trump. Let's do it, buddy. We'll see you guys on the beach.